Good morning. We're going to be studying in James chapter 4, and before everybody asks, pulled a target out of the ground and it popped up and scraped my chin, so that's what the mark is. Just get that over with, out of the way. Some people are just clumsy, and I'm one of them, so I think I even talked about that last week, bulls in china shops, and that's me.
That's my nickname, Bulls in China Club. And I was just telling Maria about my incident this morning.
Alrighty. So, alrighty. So we're going to begin there in chapter 4, verses 1 through 12 is dealing with resisting evil influences. And so, we finished in chapter 3. After he began by speaking about the dangers of the tongue and how much damage can be done with the tongue, not only to ourselves but to others. Talks about how little matter a fire kindles, how great a matter a little fire kindles. Just like that tongue is a fire, it can set things on fire. And he goes on in verse 13, he says, who is a wise man? So he kind of brackets that section there, beginning with, be not many masters, knowing we shall receive the greater condemnation. For many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same as a perfect man, and also able to bridle his whole body. It comes down to verse 13, kind of brackets that whole teaching on the tongue. He says, who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you, let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness and wisdom. So, the wise man or the godly person, the full-grown, mature person, they control their tongue and they also control their actions. And so he goes on in verse 14, he says, if you have bitter envying and strife in your hearts, he says, where does this wisdom come from? It doesn't come from God. It comes from, not from above, but it's earthly and sensual and devilish. And so he says where envying is and strife and all those things is confusion and every evil work. And he says the pure religion, pure wisdom, it's pure, it's peaceable, gentle, easy to be entreated, full of mercy, good fruits without partiality and without hypocrisy. Very much akin to like what Paul writes about in Ephesians chapter 5, 22 and 23, the fruit of the spirits. We don't have that, and I always think it's interesting, a little off topic there in Ephesians chapter 5, the fruit of the Spirit. It's not fruits of the Spirit, it's the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, all those things. If we don't have all of those things, we don't have the fruit of the Spirit. And it's that simple. And so if we are not behaving ourselves in a way that's pure and peaceable and gentle, and so forth, as he describes here, we're not having pure religion. Our religion is not pure. And so he says the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace. And so if we're going to have the fruit of righteousness, we've got to exhibit the fruit of the Spirit. And so there's that connection there with the fruit of the spirits. And so he goes back to this earthly or this devilish sensual wisdom as we look in verses 1 through 12. He says, from whence come wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence, even of your lust that war in your members? And so where do problems and divisions come from in the church?
From within.
Individuals.
Yeah, from individuals. Okay. Sometimes the division in the church is necessary when someone is teaching false doctrine. And they won't repent and they won't stop. And most, though, I think division of the church is over things that are not.
Personality conflicts.
They're personality conflicts as much as anything. And so are people not living up to what they actually profess to believe. So where does this come from? It comes from your lusts. You go back to chapter 1, verses 14 and 15, where he talks about how we are tempted and how when we give in to temptation. He says, but every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed, and when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. So, sin is the reason for these things. It's not necessarily the lust of the flesh, but it's the giving in to the lust of the flesh that causes these wars and fightings. You know, one of the things may be selfishness. And so he says, you lust and have not, you kill and desire to have and cannot obtain, you fight in war, yet you have not, because you ask not. Now, are they really killing each other? Is this to be taken literally, that they're fighting amongst each other and physically killing each other?
No, addressing the reputations.
Yeah.
Character assassination.
Yeah, character assassination and things of that nature, yeah. And so, why? Again, it's you want things you don't have. It's envy. Maybe you see someone, you know, again, why are they showing partiality to the rich in chapter 2? Out of, you know, envy. Well, you know, if I treat this person nice, maybe they'll give me some of what they have. And so it's like, you know, my grandpa would drive around and see something in the yard at somebody's house and say, man, I could use that. I need to go make friends with that guy so I can borrow his tools. He was joking, but anyway. But it's just the kind of the way people have this envy, this jealousy or envy. And so envy and its twin sister, jealousy. And so that's what causes problems and divisions within the church. It's based on our own lusts, our own desires, our own wanting to give in to our evil desires. And so it even could just be anger. You know, someone does something that makes me angry, and, you know, I can let it go, or I could go around and assassinate their character. And so so these things, they come from our lusts. And it's interesting, that Greek word there is the same word we get hedonism from. So hedone, that's the Greek word. And so it's the idea of wanting to gratify your own pleasures. And so so there's an inner struggle. You covet, you fight, you don't have, you know, called kind of keeping up with the Joneses, maybe. Yes, sir.
That's what I
You know, the apostles fought among themselves.
That's right.
Yes.
And why do we have a plurality of elders?
Yeah.
Different personalities.
That's right.
Agreement.
They can come into agreement, so that's right.
We're never gonna have a full agreement.
Probably not.
Anywhere among people.
Probably not. Not in most areas. So, I mean, people probably don't like the color of the carpet. So, if you change it, somebody will like it, somebody won't. So, that's just how it is.
I don't think God has asked us to be all the same.
No.
He's asked us to be ourselves, but to temper ourselves within these limits.
That's right.
That's very good.
That's
Yeah.
a
Very
good,
good.
good way of putting it.
It's
Yeah.
called self-discipline.
Yeah,
That's it.
self-discipline, yeah. Gives us the guide, you know, gives us, here is the standard, and now you live up to that. But each of us is individual. And so that may look different with each one of us,
Yep.
to some degree.
And
And so,
verse 8 in chapter 3 says, but no man can tame the tongue, it is an unruly evil and full of deadly poison.
always have to keep an eye on it.
Gotta keep
Never never leave it on its own. So, yeah.
You know, sometimes I don't like myself.
Yeah, and I have those days.
I think we cannot relate to that.
I
Well,
was
your question, why did I say that? I didn't have to say it, but I said it.
yeah,
You let your mouth overload your rear end.
yep.
Yep.
Like a
Alligator
Top Gun,
mouth.
you know, your mouth is writing checks your body can't cash. So, gotta, yep, be careful what we say and how we conduct ourselves, and you know, don't let the worldly things, the devilish things, you know, overwhelm us. the temptation to lash back because someone snapped at me, or I think they snapped at me, and then to lash back. And that's not the way to do things. So you ask and receive not because you ask amiss. The motive, he says, that you may consume it on your own lust. What's the motive for asking? What's the motive for prayer?
Envy, all those things again.
That's right.
Asking for some materialism.
Selfishness.
Yeah. Is God going to grant our requests that are selfish in nature?
No.
They go against our own spiritual benefit, what's good for us spiritually?
No.
Absolutely not. And so, in fact, he may throw obstacles in our way
That's right.
providentially, but there's always that way of escape. It's always there as well. And the problem with the way of escape is we often identify it, but we don't take it. Sometimes it's close your mouth. Sometimes it's leave. Whatever the way of escape is. But we've got to use it. All right, so he says you don't receive what you want from the Lord because what you want is ungodly. Is really what he's saying. He says, ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. So what does it mean to be a friend of the world in this context?
To like the world, to be a part of it.
Be a
Want
part
to
of
be part of it, want to be like them.
Okay.
Desire the things the world has.
Yep.
Yeah.
But they try to hide
Yes.
that in their godliness,
Yeah.
They do, don't they?
Yeah. We try to
if you understand what I'm
wear godliness like a cloak to cover what they do. Yeah. That's what the Pharisees commonly did.
Yeah.
And so what when he calls somebody an adulteress and adulterer in a spiritual context, what's he talking about?
We're the bride of Christ, and that's
Okay.
that relationship.
Yeah. So we're going outside of that relationship.
Turning their back on God.
Turning away from God. Okay. And so to 2 Corinthians 6 verse 14 tells us to not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. And to be unequally yoked means that one, the picture is of two oxes pulling a plow or whatever. So if one ox is pulling a lot harder than the other ox, what's going to happen with that furrow? It's going to go in the direction of the one who's pulling the hardest. And so I think the idea there is that we're not to be in a relationship where those in the world have more pull on us than God has pull on us. And so if they influence us more than God does, then that's a friendship we need to get away from. Yes,
But all of us spend most of our time in the world,
that's right.
and that's a very big problem.
Yeah, it can be. That's why, Jesus said, I don't pray for them to be out of the world. I want them to be in the world, but I want them to be of the world. And so there's the difficulty, is we're part of two kingdoms. We're part of God's kingdom, but we're also part of the world. Yes, ma'am.
From what I don't have, excuse me, I don't have a TV hooked up, but I do have the radio. There's so much technology today that can take a brother or sister and make them feel like they're missing out on something. The advertisement is so convincing. That's what I pray. I pray that they don't take what the word of these advertisements. Don't take that because it's coming from them. It's not coming from God.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's very hard for so many people who live with that technology.
Yeah.
I feel sorry. I'm serious. I feel sorry for them.
Well, it's like social media envy. If people put all the cool stuff they're doing on social media, man, they're really living the good life and everything's perfect with them. Well, they don't put is, they had a fight with their kids and all these other things, all the bad stuff they don't put on there. And they kind of glamorize what they're doing. And so it's interesting to, wonder what's really going on.
And people have a tendency of going outside the word to get help.
Yeah.
Instead of going straight to God and with all the brothers and sisters, ask them to pray for you. Ask for that strength.
Yeah.
The world can't solve your problems.
Well, that's right. Just like, I always say this around election time is, doesn't really, we can vote for whoever we want, that's fine, but don't depend upon some politician to fix what's wrong with this country, because what's wrong with this country cannot be solved with politics. And so only the gospel can fix our problems, and why should we just focus on our country when there's the whole world out there? And as a U.S. citizen, I love America. I serve my country like many of you guys have done, and it's still not my highest allegiance, and it never will be. And so, anyway, where do these things come from? It does not come from God. It comes from the sensual desires, these influences of the world. That we live in the world, we have to influence the world and not be influenced by the world. And that's where it gets really tough. And so in verse 5, he kind of identifies the problem. He says, do you think the scripture saith in vain, the spirit that dwelleth in us lusteth to envy? What's he mean there?
Wants us to do wrong.
Yeah. And we just have a tendency, it's a human nature almost, to be envious.
Every one of us got one of them.
Yeah.
That's what Paul's telling us in Romans. That's what he explains to us about our duality.
Yeah, Romans chapter 7, where he gives what I would I do, what I would not I do, and what I would I don't do, and all these things. And it's a tough thing. It's a battle we all face.
Well, Chuck Horner said that this jealousy is God's jealousy for his people.
Yeah.
Is the way he looked at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one words it a little bit differently. He says, or do you think that the scripture speaks to no purpose? He, speaking of the Lord, jealously desires the Spirit which he has made to dwell in us.
Okay. Yeah.
And I mean, when you read that, you can easily understand it. He made our spirit and gave it to us, but he wants it to come home to him.
Yeah. That's right. It returns to him. All right.
Being a Christian can be tough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much to pull you away. And a lot of times you're ostracized for being a Christian. Being a Christian in the military is very difficult.
Yeah.
Because the military is not a Christian organization.
Yeah. They don't make a lot of allowances for religious diversity. I wasn't a Christian when I was in, so I don't know what it was like. So, but I know Christians who have served while they were Christians, and it's tough. So, you're right. All right. Let's see. Verse 6 says, but he giveth more grace, wherefore he saith, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace to the humble. And so he gives more grace, greater grace to the humble. And so Romans chapter 5 verse 20 says, moreover the law entered that the offense may abound, but where sin abounded, grace did much more abound. And so he gives more grace, or greater grace in view of the greater requirement. As we saw there in Romans 5:20. But it says he resisteth the proud and gives grace to the humble. He resisteth. That's one of the things I like about the King James is the ETH endings. It makes it very clear this is present tense continuous action. Right now, God resisteth the proud. He is resisting the proud. And every time we become lifted up and prideful, God resists us. And when we are humble, he gives us more grace. That's like the Pharisee and the publican, Luke chapter 18. They both go into the temple to pray, and the Pharisee gets up and he strikes a pose and he says, Lord, I thank you that I am not like these other people, these scumbags over here, like this scumbag publican. That's from the Jack translation of the Bible. And the scumbag publican says, he won't even look up. Beats on his breast, says, forgive me, I'm a sinner. And he says, this man went up to his house justified, whereas the other man did not. Because
He committed sin by what he was saying.
yeah, he was prideful. God resists the prideful, and so the way up is down. Humble yourself, and God will lift you up. Lift yourself up, well, God's going to bring you down. And so that's just kind of the way that works. And so pride goeth before the fall, a haughty spirit, and so forth. And so he gives grace to the humble. Submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. And so all of these verbs here in the next few verses are in the past tense, an imperative. Past tense imperative mood. They signify things that are done once for all. And so when he says submit, you do it once and you do it once for all. That's a full, complete commitment, submission to God. It's not, I'll submit to him for this moment, but not later on. It's when you became a Christian, he says, you submitted to God. He says, resist the devil. In submitting to God, you have resisted the devil. And you draw nigh to God. He will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners. Purify your hearts, ye double-minded. All these things are things that we do one time. And it's like a complete submission to God. It is a life of resistance against the devil. It is a life of drawing near to God. It's a life of cleansing your hands and your hearts.
It may be just a coincidence, but it is a wonderful coincidence that submit and commit sound so much alike.
Yeah. And so when you read submit, resist, draw nigh, cleanse, purify, be afflicted, mourn, weep, be turned, and humble, as the King James puts them, those are all that simple past tense in the imperative mood. So it's something you do one time and it carries on. And flee, draw nigh, and so forth. If the devil flee from you, you draw nigh to God, he's going to draw nigh to you. He's going to lift you up. That's a future tense and active on God's part. So this indicates that we have to do our part before God does anything else. And so he's not going to draw nigh to us if we don't draw nigh to him. It's like, again, the prodigal son's father. He didn't go looking for his son. He waited for his son to come home, and when he saw him coming, he ran to meet him. But he didn't go into the far country trying to find his son. And so we draw near to God, he's going to draw near to us. And so if we resist the devil, he's going to run away. He's going to flee. Not going to go away forever. He'll come back. But if we've got to resist him. And so these are some ways to resist the ungodly influences of the world. And so reject friendship of the world, where we let the world have more pull on us and more care in our hearts for the world than of God. Then do these things. Submit to the will of God. Excuse me, sorry. And submit yourselves to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. And so, draw nigh to God, he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners. What's he talking about? Cleanse your hands, ye sinners.
We're talking about cleanse your mind and your heart.
Keep yourself
Of sin.
unspotted from the world.
Yeah. I'm reminded of Shakespeare play, Macbeth, where Lady Macbeth, she's washing her hands over and over, and she can't get them clean, and she keeps going out spot. And it's funny, while I lived in Hawaii, there was a Japanese language TV channel there, and I was flipping channels, and it was these samurais and all these different samurais doing stuff, and it was all in Japanese. And then there was this lady in the background. She was washing her hands over and over again, over and over again. I was like, I almost made it me think that it was Macbeth. And I watched a little bit further, and here come these samurais holding trees, and they're attacking the castle. Oh, yep, it's Japanese Macbeth. Anyway, that doesn't really have anything to do with this, but the way she was washing her hands, she cannot get her hands clean. A guilty conscience is really what that's about.
It's really repentance, always asking for forgiveness.
Yeah. And so he says, cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts. And so when we stop sinning and we wash away the stain of sin off of our hands, purify your hearts, ye double-minded. What did James say about a double-minded man in chapter 1?
He's really one-sided.
Unstable in all his ways.
Unstable. And so, and the idea of being double-minded, it's like, I go this way, I go that way, I go this way, I go that way. Well, you try going real fast to the right and decide to turn back to the left, you're probably going to fall.
Crash.
Crash. That's my problem, why I'm such a klutz. But verse 9, he says, be afflicted and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to heaviness. And so, be afflicted and mourn. Isn't that the attitude we ought to have with regards to sin?
Blessed are they that mourn.
Yeah, blessed are they that mourn. Was it Ecclesiastes chapter 7, somewhere in there? Solomon speaks about that it's better to go into the house of mourning than into the house of mirth. And so in the house of mirth, you'll have a good time, but you go to the house of mourning, you might learn something. And again, that's Jack's translation of Ecclesiastes 7. But he says, let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to heaviness.
It's a serious business.
Yeah, serious business, yeah, good way. In verse 10, he says, humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he will lift you up. So how do we humble ourselves in the sight of the Lord?
Follow his will.
Submit to him.
We do all these things that we've just looked at here. We cleanse our hands, we draw nigh to God, we are afflicted, we mourn, and so forth. And so he says, humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he will lift you up. I don't know how many times that idea is said just in the New Testament alone, but I can think of about 5 times where Jesus said those exact words on different occasions, or similar words. One of those was with the parable of the Pharisee and the publican we just talked about. And so if we humble ourselves in the sight of the Lord, he will do the lifting up. We draw near to him, he will draw near to us. And so humble yourselves. Verse 11, he says, speak not evil one of another, brethren. He that speaketh evil of his brother and judgeth his brother speaketh evil of the law and judgeth the law. But if thou judge the law, thou art a doer of the law, but not a doer of the law, but a judge. And so, who is the ultimate judge in the world? It's God. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll just be straightforward with it. So if I have a problem with a brother or sister, but I go home and I'm talking out loud to God, and he's my father, so I'm like, Father, this is how I feel, and I'll tell him, sometimes I'm yelling it because I am so angry, so mad. Can I do that? I mean, even though I
Yeah.
did.
Well, I think so. I mean,
You're just showing your emotion to God.
Yes, you are.
we're to let God know what it is that's on our heart and on our minds. He knows, but He wants to hear it from us.
Cast all
Okay.
your cares on him.
But does he help you with that person?
Well, I'm not asking for help right now. I want to be angry. No, serious. That's what I say. I say, God, let me be angry right now. You know, I'm serious. But as time goes by, I look at it and say, you know what? Maria, number one is not even your business.
Yeah.
I said, this is God's business, not yours.
Yeah.
But I do thank God for allowing me to express myself.
Yeah.
But the answer you received, that it wasn't your business, there was God talking with you in remarks to that. The anger that you had and you displayed.
So,
And he
but
may
it's just
be
being
saying-
God and my animals.
And He may be saying, right now is not the time. But you do need to go and talk to this person and help them understand that there is something that they're doing that God does not appreciate, and be able to show them the scriptures.
You know, there is nothing wrong with the anger, the emotion of anger. God gave it to us for a reason. There are things we ought to be angry about. And there are things that I'm still angry about, you know, years later. And I think we should, you know, there's nothing wrong with being angry about things.
Isn't it what you do with the anger?
Yeah, I
Is
mean,
the point?
Yeah.
be ye angry and sin not, Ephesians 4 verse 32, neither let the sun go down on your wrath.
And make
How
sure
you
you're
channel
angry-
that anger
Yeah.
for good.
And also make
Yeah.
sure you're angry appropriately.
Yeah, make sure your anger is appropriate anger. That's,
What was
because
that?
sometimes, appropriate. Sometimes we get angry over things we shouldn't get angry about. There are things that we should get angry about,
And we don't.
and sometimes don't, yeah. And so, but in our anger, we must never act out, you know, in a
Yeah.
improper way. There's a proper way to channel anger, as Dad said. There's a way to do it. And sometimes if that emotion is so hard that, I mean, I'm feeling this anger, sometimes you need a cool down period.
Well, yesterday while we were spreading that sod, I got angry with myself because I wear a tire out. So quickly I got hot, I got weak, and
Join the club.
I got mad at myself for getting old. That's it.
But
Yeah?
you have to learn to face yourself at that. I know from age, I know that I can work about 5 minutes and then I have to sit down and admire what I did.
But maybe that's what I need to do is admire instead of getting angry, not being able to do it.
You
Yeah,
pick up
that's
and
right.
supervise
You gotta
yourself.
control
Come
it.
back and look at it.
Yeah.
Your anger has to be controlled. If you go into a rage, you're not in the godly format when you're in a rage.
Right.
You're in the devil's format.
I got pretty angry yesterday afternoon.
That's why Ephesians 4:33 says, neither give place to the devil. It says, be angry, sin not. Neither give place to the devil. As you get in place if you're angry, if you're letting anger control you. And so, we gotta control our anger, but sometimes we hold on to that anger when we shouldn't.
And
And,
it affects the relationships around you
so.
when you hold on to anger.
And again, I can anger at the things people do without being angry at the person.
Yeah.
And so that's really where it kind of needs to move. You know, I can think of people that have done bad to me, and I'm angry that they've done it, and I'm angry that they haven't repented. But I'm not holding that anger against them to the point where if they come to me and let's deal with it, we'll deal with it. And so, and I'm willing to forgive. And so we've got to have that attitude of always being willing to forgive one another, to let go of that anger and to forgive. But going back here, when we speak evil of one another, we judge one another. Who's the judge of this world? It's God. And so when we
Set yourself up.
try to judge others, what are we doing? We're setting ourselves and we're trying to do God's job. Is that not lifting ourselves up? putting ourselves equal with God.
You know, that's a touchy thing, because if you don't judge, you just become a leaf in the wind.
Yeah.
There is a requirement for judgment to
There
a
is.
degree.
Yeah.
But not to anger.
Yeah. It's got to be a righteous judgment.
Yeah.
It's got to be not according just to appearances only, but it's got to be a righteous judgment. And so, Matthew 7 verse 1 is the sinner's favorite verse, but they don't even know what verses 2 through 5 say. And so it talks about we're going to be judged. Yes, judge not that you be not judged. Well, the standard of judgment we use, the standard is going to be used against us. And so it behooves us to have righteous judgments. And so we do make judgment in some areas. But here, he's talking about unjust judgments, unrighteous judgments. And when we do that, when we judge others, we're putting ourselves in the place of God, and we try to judge their intentions and judge their heart, and judge those things that matter, that we can't know based on only what we see. He says we're speaking evil of the law, we're judging the law, and if we judge the law, we're not a doer of the law, but we're a judge. He says, there is one lawgiver who is able to save and destroy. Who art thou that judgest another? And so, again, God ultimately is the one who makes judgments. And so when we try to do and judge people in ways that God does not, then we get ourselves into trouble. All right, verses 13 through 17. It's kind of taking proper regard for God in our plans. And so he says, go to now, you that say, today or tomorrow we will go into such a city and continue there a year and buy and sell and get gain. And so, he's talking about making, life decisions and plans. That I'm going to go and I'm going to go to this city and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to buy there, I'm going to sell there, and I'm going to get rich there. He says, whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away. What happens to the fog when the sun gets up?
Disappears.
It goes away. He said that's what your life is just like.
Or it's like a breath of cold, breathing into the cold morning air, and it disappears.
Immediately, yeah. In the grand scheme of eternity, even Methuselah's life, all 969 years is a blink. And so compared to eternity. And so why should we be so concerned about what goes on in this world and what we're going to do and what plans we're going to make when our life is just brief? So brief compared to eternity. It's going to be such a short time that we won't remember it in eternity. I don't know. That's just what I think. But go ahead.
We just need to make sure we're heading the right direction.
That's right. It's like, I don't remember 2 minutes that happened last week. In eternity, I'm not going to remember the 90 or 100 years or 50 years I live here on this earth. I'm not even going to remember it or care. It's not going to matter. And so, why should we? Well, it's like is it Mark chapter 12, at the rich farmer, the parable of the rich farmer. He's got all these. He has a bumper crop. He looks around. His barns aren't big enough to hold it all, and so he says, "I'm going to tear them down. I'm going to build bigger, and then I'm just going to relax for the rest of my life, and kind of take it easy." And God says, "You fool! Tonight your life is required of you." He's not going to have a life. He's going to die that night. And so, how should we be spending our time?
Preparing for eternity.
In the moment.
If I knew I was going to die tomorrow, what would I be doing today?
Worrying about it.
What should I be doing today?
Ignoring it.
Yeah. So, isn't that basically what he's saying here? Your life could be over today. So why are you wasting time? Live for God. And it kind of goes back to what we've talked about. He said, you don't know what might happen. For you ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that. But now ye rejoice in your boastings, all such rejoicing is evil. Therefore to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. And there is I think a verse that gets a lot of us in trouble. We know what the right thing to do is, but we don't do it. And knowing that life is so short, it's so brief, and that our worldly plans could so easily come to nothing, then we need to get busy serving God and doing what's right. And if we don't do it, it's that sin of omission. We don't do it, that's still a sin. If we don't do what we know to do, and we don't do what the Bible says to do, whether we know what the Bible says or not. And so that means we need to understand the Bible. The Bible tells us what's right and what's wrong. And so we can't just guess on our own sometimes. All right, I think we're out of time there.